Hello and welcome to FinTech Diary. Every week we speak to an industry expert who's part of the FinTech revolution. In the world of FinTechs or financial innovation, which is based on constant evolution and innovation, we question change makers on how they plan ahead and read the future developments. In every chapter of FinTech Diary, we get the breadth and depth of every segment related to FinTech. My name is Amol Dete, and my guest for this chapter is Rishi Khosla, co-founder and CEO of Oaknorth. Rishi, glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So Rishi, thank you so much once again, and good to see you and good to have you. In fact, I'm talking to someone after a long time who's based in London, and we are keen to understand many things from you. So to begin with, Rishi, let me ask a very, very basic question because perhaps the readers or the viewers may not know much about Oaknorth. So introduce Oaknorth to us in terms of, are you a licensed entity? How do you position yourself? Do you position yourself as a challenger bank, as a neobank, as a fintech? And more importantly, how's Oaknorth doing in London?
So let me start by saying Oaknorth's mission in life is really to help entrepreneurs scale their businesses. So ultimately, everything we do is about helping those businesses which need to get capital and over time other services actually get that so they can actually scale and grow. And we feel like those small, medium-sized companies generally get much less attention than your larger corporates. And also probably your micro businesses, which act and feel like consumers, also get a pretty good service because there's been so much evolution in terms of offerings for the consumer, which has spilled into that micro business space. So we're really focused on that bit in between, which we term as the missing middle. So that's the reason for us to be. Within that, the core of what we have built is a neobank focused on that missing middle. And we've done that in the UK. We got the third new banking license in 150 years in the UK and launched in September 2015. Since then, we've helped create over 30,000 new jobs in the UK across industries. And we've helped the building of about 30-odd thousand new affordable homes in the country as well. So fundamentally, we have a fully licensed, fully regulated neobank focused on SMEs. It's interesting that you say that one of the purposes of this weekly program of yours is to help entrepreneurs look forward. Looking forward is a core aspect of what the differentiation of Oaknorth is. So we've created this thing called the Oaknorth Credit Intelligence, which is a whole framework which helps us look forward on behalf of our clients, and as a function of that, helps us service those clients better.
Sure. That was good opening, Rishi. I think quite a meaningful introduction. Let me get into some specifics and maybe understand more from you. I will come to you when you speak about missing middle, and that's kind of the mantra that I learned because that's what I see on your website as well. But if I ask you specifically, what kinds of products are you offering? Which are the businesses that you are in right now?
Sure. So again, in the neobank, we have fundamentally two offerings, core offerings today. One is lending and the other one is savings, right? In the savings area, we have a few 100,000 customers who effectively come and deposit with us. And we provide them savings functionality for those deposits. And then on the lending side, we lend across the economy. We're typically, as I say, lending to that missing middle. So our sweet spot is companies which are, 1 to 50 million in revenue. We'll do companies which will go all the way up to 100 million as well, but typically 1 to 50. We support clients who are in examples of areas could be healthcare, manufacturing, business services, real estate, and in the real estate space, residential, commercial, all the way to things like hotels and the like. So So very broad-based, and somewhat reflective of the UK economy in terms of where our main focuses are in terms of types of clients.
Sure. So, Rishi, let me get into your specific products and would like to learn more. Since you're mentioning about missing middle, and that's what the line that I really liked on your website, which says we are redefining the way banks lend with a missing middle. So, tell us more about who's this middle and how big is this market? And more importantly, what have you learned about this market in the last 7 years?
So I'll pick back up on something which I mentioned in my opening. When you look at the span from a single consumer to the largest corporate, right? In between that, you go, I mean, obviously depending on how much granularity, but you go from that consumer to a micro business to a business which is, how can I put it, has over 10 or 20 employees, has over 500,000 or 1 million of revenue. At that point, it becomes something which the risk and the attributes, I should say, of that business would still be very tied to the owner manager, but they may not be a one-to-one mapping. Whereas in a micro business, it's much closer to a one-to-one mapping on that individual. So that's our next category. And then from there, you've got a whole continuum where you go into businesses which are fundamentally standalone businesses, which operate and are driven by what happens in their industry, in their competitive set, with their, in that market, versus one which is totally reliant on the owner manager. So, and then you get to a point where you become a small corporate or a mid-sized larger company. At that point, you then graduate in terms of the types of servicing you get. So that's the continuum. As soon as you go to the large side, you get the investment banks, you get the corporate desks of the big banks who spend a lot of time with you, and generally you get serviced very well. If you're that consumer micro business, there's been so much investment by incumbent banks, fintechs, etc., to make that experience better. When you look at the piece in between, it really is hard to apply technology and statistical processes to that space, because if you're lending 1, 2, 5, 10 million, right, those are amounts that you don't want to lend statistically based on statistical models. You want to combine fundamental and statistical, and to do that well is really tough. That's the area that we focus on, and that's what Oaknorth Credit Intelligence is all about.
Interesting. Rishi, also, do you mind sharing how much is your customer base right now? I mean, how many customers do you have in terms of those who have a saving account with you? And also on the lending side, what's your total customer base? And more importantly, how much loans do you disburse on a monthly basis?
So let me share with you the numbers that we put out publicly. So the number of customers overall is in the low hundreds of thousands. We have total outstanding loans of about £4.6 billion, and we have lent over the last 7 years around £8 billion, £8.5 billion.
So when we discuss specifically about the missing middle, I think I really liked what you can say, your explanation in terms of why this space is important. Can you also add to it in terms of how do you see the potential in this space going ahead? Because I see the other challenger banks or maybe a neobanks will also try to grab this space, and there will be a heavy competition, right?
So absolutely. For my business partner, myself, this has so far been a 20-year journey. Our previous company was a data analytics company called Copal. And we learned a lot about how to actually think about credit analysis as we built up that business. And I would say taking those learnings and adding to those, etc., is how we built out Oaknorth Credit Intelligence, which, as we talked about, in our view, is the key driver for us to be able to address this segment of the market in a highly differentiated manner. So absolutely, there are many companies which play in this space today, many incumbent banks, etc. But when you look at the specific focus and the ability to service clients the way we do, we have pretty strong differentiation. And like with anything, you need to continually get better. And as you continually get better, it's that much harder for others to catch. But ultimately, that's down to us to continually evolve.
Sure. So what I learned, by what you told me and also by going through a website and reading some reports is that your on-credit intelligence suite is also one of the very important product that you offer to the banks, right? So I would like you to tell us how has been the response from other banks to your specific offerings on the credit intelligence suite. I mean, how do you share that product with them? Are you maybe on a revenue basis or just on a maybe what you can say on a mutual understanding basis? How is it? Or it's your product service to the other banks?
So you're right. We do take a part of the credit intelligence platform and actually have fully productized that into a SaaS offering. And we provide that as an enterprise SaaS solution to other banks. We have about $430 billion worth of lending on that product now. So pretty substantive volume of loans. And we charge, as I say, we charge a SaaS fee for that to our clients. And the predominant market that we focus on there is the US.
Okay, sure. And how many banks maybe are, if you could share or give me some, understanding in terms of how many banks or the financial institutions are using this product, and is the contribution in terms of the charges that you add to them are really significant?
So number of banks, about a dozen. Is the contribution to, as in, are we adding significant value to them or,
yes.
Sorry.
No. So basically you charge a SaaS fees to them, right? So
Yep.
The amount which you receive from them or the revenue which is generated out of this product, right? Is it a significant number for your balance sheet?
Today it's not a significant number, no.
Okay, sure. So Rishi, now I have a very important question, right? And whole world is betting really high on the credit. FinTechs, the neobanks, the challenger or the tech solution companies are looking at credit in a far more innovative manner. And that's where your core is also. So I would like you to tell us, how are you underwriting the products? What difference are you making in, understanding the risk of the borrowers?
So again, that all comes to credit intelligence, right? It's sort of having an approach where we are looking forward on a very granular basis across many industries, and actually based on that, formulating a strong credit model, which then gets used, which is very specific to the industry that a particular company is in. So ultimately, like I mentioned, the business that my business partner and myself had created before laid a very strong foundation in terms of actually how to think about credit with a large cap mindset. And what we've done with Oaknorth is applied that through to that smaller cap space.
But the question is ultimately, while underwriting the risks, any parameters that you want to share that maybe you put it on the headline or the highlighted parameters or something like that, because ultimately you have to ensure that the borrowers should service the debt, and you should have a mechanism in terms of, by any chance, if they don't service the debt, what will you do?
Yeah, so our parameters are configured at the industry level. So we've got over 274 industries, and for each of those industries, we think about operating parameters and financial parameters which matter for that particular industry group. Okay. So that's on a very specific level. On a generalist level, every lender looks at basic things like interest coverage, debt service coverage, all of those types of things. And obviously we do all of that. But none of that is obviously you shouldn't be lending if you're not doing that, right? And in terms of your point about, the systems, if people, don't pay and everything, of course, that's table stakes, right? You need to have that stuff if you're in the game, otherwise you shouldn't be in the game.
Sure. So let me ask a couple of soft questions in terms of how do you see the whole industry now? Because innovation is everywhere. All the world has started talking about innovation. The digital is a new norm of the world right now. So how do you see the whole innovation happening in the banking and finance space, and how do you react to it?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that during COVID, everyone moved clearly to digital interfaces. And especially as individuals moved more of their personal lives onto those, including banking, as soon as you put those same individuals back in the corporate persona, they're much more open to doing more digitally, right? So there's a lot of innovation, but there's a lot of openness as well to adopt digital journeys and the like. So given that, and given the very significant amount of additional funding which has gone in over the last 3-4 years into the fintech space, I think that innovation will absolutely continue. The key question is really, will the innovation be a little bit more measured? Because clearly the funding which was available until arguably late last year is clearly no longer available, right? In terms of the quantums and the volumes off. So ultimately, does that impact the amount of innovation? I think it definitely impacts the quality of innovation.
Noted. Maybe last one or 2 point, Rishi. In India, the fintech rally has been also very strong. Most of the fintechs are also the unicorn in India right now, and many fintechs now are operating in a credit space. Products like BNPL, buy now pay later, and the personal loans are very, very famous. How is it in London? Any particular product is very famous for you on the credit side? How's the trend that you see specifically in the digital lending side there?
Again, if you zoom out and not speak about Oaknorth, but you speak about the general market, most of the activity is in the consumer and micro business space, right? Buy now, pay later has clearly been a very large trend across Europe and the US, frankly, including the UK. And I think that there are clearly some very significant players within that space. And again, our perspective is that just leads to better customer choice and therefore better customer experiences. So net, that's good for the industry. Picking up on one of the previous points I mentioned, clearly, just given the funding environment, the amount of new players who are likely to come in and play in that type of space is probably going to be more limited than it otherwise would have been. But as I said, there's been a lot of good innovation so far. And if I'm going to pull out any particular one area, it will be BNPL. But
Sure.
I'll also say that's not where Oaknorth plays. There are inherent risks within BNPL which are very different from where we play. So that's very much a response to a question around market size and momentum outside. It was on a general basis.
Sure. And how do you view and review the Indian fintech market right now? What's your take specifically on the India's fintechs?
So look, you guys are the experts there, right? I think that quite similar to elsewhere, there was a lot of good innovation, a lot of like blitz scaling type activity happening. And some of that, to take some of that out of the market is healthy, right? And actually have very strong foundations built and scale on strong foundations. So yeah, that would be my sort of thoughts on that.
Thanks, Rishi. And my last question is specifically about your expansion plans or maybe your future, because that kind of gives us a sense in terms of where the FinTech rally is also heading. So, what next for Oaknorth, maybe next 2 to 3 years? What are the big plans that you have? If you could share some of them. And by any chance, you're expanding and maybe trying to also hitting India?
So we have lots of plans. How many of them we're sort of sharing externally is much more limited. We could look at potential geographic expansion, where again to be determined. We could absolutely look at doing more with our current client segment and supporting them in different ways. And having spent time with them, you just learn more and more about areas that you could support them well with in a productive manner. So I think it's going to be a combination of doing more with our customer base and the customer segment, and potentially looking geographically.
Sure. Noted your points, Rishi. I think I'm done with my questions unless you want to add something. But thank you so much for the time that you spent and the questions that you answered. That was truly meaningful. Thank you so much, Rishi.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Click on the FinTech Diary tab to view our previous episodes as well on the etbfsi.com. If you like it, please don't forget to share it on social media as well. Also, please ensure you're subscribed to our daily newsletter, which is absolutely for free. Thank you so much for watching FinTech Diary on etbfsi.com. Thank you.